This is Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield, a podcast that resources families and friends with tools to have important conversations about mental and emotional health. This show is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Here's your host, Trever Shirin.
Thank you for joining us today on Candid Conversations. We are glad to be joining you in our continued creation of a studio at Mayfield Counseling Centers.
We're figuring it out.
Slowly but surely. Fortunately for all of you podcasters, nothing has actually changed. So there's no discombobulation, and we are grateful for you and your presence with us.
I just want to shout out to our podcast listeners, too. I mean, we're continuing to grow in listens, and thank you if you're sharing it. And just encourage you that if you find some of this stuff valuable, as we do, obviously we're biased, but would you share it? Would you get your friends and family involved in listening? And it's our heart that we can equip people to care for others better.
Yeah, that would really encourage us.
Ooh, nice one. Nice slide in there. I like that.
And we are talking about encouragement today. Today is part 4, I think, of a 5-part series on encouragement. You didn't know that we could get so detailed about encouraging, did you?
I didn't think we could either.
So let's review. Day 1.
Part 1 was kind of the overview when we had the aha moment of like, oh, we probably could do a 3-part or 4-part or whatever. So
there's more to this than we thought.
Yeah. So I think what second one was validation that you took.
Validation.
Yeah,
Yep.
Talking about the idea that just calling out things, right, that we see, and isn't it? What'd you say? It was like
validation is that's the right way to do that thing.
Right.
That's the correct. It's
calling out the obvious.
Yeah. It's either or. It's either the right way or the wrong way.
Right. And then we did affirmation was the third week, and that was really. So that's the right way, the wrong way to do it, and he did it really well.
Yep. Yep.
It's very simple.
And so today is the next step, encouragement. Now, I think this is going to be a little bit easier to understand, and it's not as nuanced as some of the other ones.
Or is it?
Or is it? Bum, bum, bum. So, Dr. Mayfield, let's start by just kind of laying out our initial thoughts about what is encouragement in this overall steps of encouragement conversation.
Well, as I've been thinking about this week, there's a bunch of different ways we could have done research. So I did. I went to, what does sacred text say? What does the definition in Webster's dictionary say? Mm-hmm. What does literature say? Really boring, right? But the big thing that came up was it's an identity thing, right? It's calling out things in somebody that speak to their identity, and when we talk about identity, let's maybe break that down for a second, because I'm not sure all of our listeners understand when we talk about that. But identity is who we're meant to be, who we've been created to be. Operating out of our giftings, operating out of our uniqueness, and so I think encouragement in a lot of ways is calling out and honoring, at least in my mind, those things. Mm-hmm. So for example, shout out to Trevor. We did a fantastic training on Monday with a very just thinking about this guy's experience in 45 years as a therapist, and he's
not me, a gentleman named Steve Earle.
Steve Earle.
Just in case you're wondering.
Yeah. So he saw something in you from a creative standpoint and goes, you know what? Yeah, I'll hire you. I'll use you to create these DVDs and these videos, right? So he saw something in your identity, your creativeness. Mm-hmm. He and maybe didn't speak over you, but he chose you to be a part of this, and you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Right, and so that's the encouragement piece right there. Like, so it's taking these things that are already there, and calling them out.
Yep.
and speaking truth.
Well, and I think something that's important, because we talked about this in the first episode, is the difference between encouragement and edification. And what I'm hearing about encouragement that will separate it from next week's conversation is that it's based on an achievement, an activity, a process, something we're doing. It's the ability to call out
Doing or who you are.
Sure.
Right.
Where I can see, like, Dr. Mayfield's built this company of 30 employees, I think, something close to that.
I haven't counted recently.
And, it's grossed this amount of money over the past 3 years that it's been in existence. And it's served this many people, and we're getting this sort of recognition. And so from that information about the things that you've done and the things that you've accomplished and driven, I'm able to then speak to who you are through those things.
Sure.
And I think that's the important aspect of encouragement, is it's kind of through that lens of, you not only did you do business right in a lot of ways, not all the time. I won't go that far. I've been around long enough.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut for a second here.
But in a lot of ways, you've done business right.
Sure.
And you did it really well. And that speaks to who you are as a person, that you were able to do all of this and build a company. And we'll talk next week about how edification is slightly different.
It is, because encouragement stops.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it stops in calling out those things.
Yeah.
Right. Let me ask you this, though. Can encouragement be done without relationship?
I don't think so, because you kind of need some research.
Right. I can't go up to somebody that I just met and go, really, I see this in you, and,
Unless you're Sherlock Holmes, I could see that working.
Well, okay, maybe. Shout out to Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh man, that guy.
But no, I think you're right. It has to be in relationship, because I've got to know you and observe you long enough to go, okay, those are his giftings, those are his skills, those are her attributes, and it's something that then I'm going to spend some time. It kind of goes back to our podcast before Christmas on the art of gift giving. Right. If I'm in relationship with you or anybody else, I'm not going to just go get a gift card from Chick-fil-A and say, hey, Merry Christmas.
Right.
I could, and you might be grateful going, oh, sweet, free Chick-fil-A. But if I'm really going to speak into our relationship, I'm going to go, okay, I know he likes pipes. I know he likes, fantasy, and I know he likes D&D and all these kind of things. So how can I get a gift that's going to really speak to my knowledge of him? And I think encouragement's the same way, right? I'm not going to say, hey, nice hair.
Yeah, right.
Your glasses and your hair go really well together.
Right. We'll have my wife on at some point to talk about gift giving, because she is so good at coming up with clever ways to give gifts. There's a teacher who's leaving her school this semester, and she doesn't know her very well, but my wife was tasked with putting together a parting basket of gifts. And so my wife started to reflect on all the things she knew about this woman. And she had told this story about how she had this pet squirrel, apparently, like a domesticated squirrel in her backyard, something like that. A little
conversation for a different time there.
And so my wife's struggling to find good gifts that aren't just like a Chick-fil-A card. And
shout out to Chick-fil-A.
Right. Not a sponsor yet. She drives out of her way to go to the PetSmart and pick up a squirrel dog toy, and named it the same name as the squirrel and put it in the basket. And that one touch speaks to so much, because it says, not only do I know you more than just an acquaintance, I've listened to your stories, I've paid attention to you, and I thought about this as something that you're not gonna be able to take the squirrel with you in this new state that you're going to, but now you can take something that represents that squirrel.
Sure. But it's intentionality.
Totally.
It's going out of your way to think those things. And it's interesting. I'm not going to let people off the hook for a second. I'm going to maybe ruffle some feathers for a minute. What you just described, everybody can do.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody should do. But I think in some ways we get lazy and we don't do it.
Absolutely.
But I think the same thing with encouragement, right? Nobody's off the hook. And there are some people that are I think much more adept and skilled naturally to be an encourager.
Yeah.
But those that aren't, it doesn't mean that you get a pass.
Right.
Because this is how we were designed, how we are put together to not only give that, but to receive that.
Yeah.
And I've met a lot of people, I'm like, oh, that's just not me. Well, no,
Right.
it is, but you're just choosing not to learn or to grow into that that skill.
Well, and it to me, that argument, like it's a big pet peeve of mine to use that sort of argument to get out of something, because I hear a lot of people, and I'm not gonna target anyone as specifically right here because I haven't heard this one, but this will speak to the argument of, oh, I'm just not a strong person, so I can't handle that.
Right.
And it's like, okay, maybe you're not a strong person right now and you have some growth to do, but that does not excuse you from growing. You have the opportunity to grow stronger like everyone else. And I think sometimes we can take a weakness or something that's difficult for us and make it an excuse to not do that thing that is difficult. And to me, I think there is no lower characteristic of a person than to just hide behind weakness, rather than to find ways to grow and develop and say, yeah, I don't have the upper body strength, let's go with that, to lift this thing.
I don't. Just to put that out there.
However, I know that I need to get this couch up the stairs.
So we'll figure it out.
So I need to find a way to do that. And so it's the difference between giving up and showing a lack of grit and resiliency and saying, I'm not a good encourager, so I'm just not going to do it.
Well, it goes back to our, a year ago? Growth mindset versus fixed
totally.
mindset conversation. Goes back to our conversations where we've talked about some of Dr. Leaf's stuff. Yep. So it's an outlook of I don't have it, or I'm not good at it, so I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, I suck. It's a starting point.
Right.
Let's figure it out.
Right.
Let's get better at it.
Everybody starts at the starting line.
Right. Well, and my love language is going back to that conversation. I'm losing track of how many episodes we've got and where we're at. So
I think this is 60, something like that.
So, when we talked about love languages, my love language is words of affirmation or words of encouragement, right? And I've had to wrestle through the notion that seems selfish. Because it's not saying puff my ego up. It's just saying, hey, notice.
Yeah.
And my wife, I'll give a shout out to her. That's not her natural bent. And on our almost 12 years of marriage, she has done a fantastic job of growing in that, right? Of going, okay, this is my husband's love language.
Yeah.
I don't do that naturally,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do my darndest to figure out how to do it. And some of them, my expectations then have to be lowered a little bit, going, I'm not going to receive this daily, but
Sure.
I'm going to receive it when she's able to do it.
You have realistic
right, and she's doing a great job with it. And guys, when we're talking about this, right, it's her leaving a note on my seat of my car saying, "Hey, love you." Hey, that goes a long ways.
Yeah.
Right. Or hey, I was preaching, filling a pulpit this weekend. And she texted me between services. She goes, I watched it. You did fantastic.
Yep.
Right? And it's not rocket science.
No, she didn't have to go write an epic Shakespearean poem.
That'd be cool, though.
Yeah, but would you really understand it?
Yeah, I'd probably try. That's a good point. Yeah, you have to be like a PhD in philosophy.
Yeah, for real. Anyways.
As we digress, we're in rare form today, by the way.
Yeah.
Just
we're starting a little bit later in the day.
It's a good thing,
which we finally managed to do. One thing that I think might be important to talk about is the difference between encouragement and flattery, because I think that encouragement can get you a long distance in your relationships with people and can change the way that others view you, but it can also be manipulative.
Sure.
To be flattery.
Flattery is superficial. Oh, you look so nice today. I love your glasses.
Yeah, but none of those things you're saying are false.
Right. But it kind of puffs your ego up, right?
Sure.
But if I were to, but go back to your creativity and what you did on Monday with, speaking to the depth of that, in some ways you probably kind of go, okay, I'm going to accept that compliment, but it feels a little bit, you kind of, oh, okay. I don't know, for a lot of us, taking a compliment like that, it's hard to say thank you because, we don't want it to sound like we're prideful or whatever. I think that flattery is just an easy way to puff up ego or pride or whatever. That's my opinion, at least.
Well, it also sounds to me from what you're saying that almost a flattering statement and an encouraging statement could be the same words.
They could be. I don't know. I mean, maybe they could be. I think sometimes, though, we look at depth. I look at flattery as just really shallow.
So flattery would be more...
This is part 6.
Part 6. Would that fit better into affirmation, or is it kind of maybe in this purgatory between affirmation and encouragement?
Probably in this purgatory between the two. I mean, you think about, I'm going back to how is flattery any different than like an infatuation? So when you first meet somebody and you're just totally enraptured in their look or whatever, that's infatuation.
Yeah.
It's pretty shallow.
Yeah.
You look nice, so I'm attracted to you. There needs to be more substance than that.
Right.
And that kind of is how I see flattery, where encouragement is going, okay, I'm committing to you as my spouse or whatever, and going, so my wife, I'm going to commit to you, the vows. And, that's love. It's unconditional. It's not based on circumstance. And I think encouragement's that much more depth. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think that sounds about right to me.
And that's why I love, I hope as we get more and more listens, people interact. It'd be fun to do a live show one of these days and have people interact on Facebook or, respond to some of these questions that we've got. Yeah.
Which will happen if you reach out to us and tell us you want that to happen.
Right.
Otherwise, I mean, who's going to respond? It's up to you.
Could be like that. Just sitting here, crickets. Like Big Bang Theory, fun with flags, and there's nothing. Nobody.
We'll
responding.
Just sit here silently, staring at the computer, waiting for somebody to be friends with us. We'll just be Michael Scott in the midst of everything.
For those of you that don't know, that's The Office. Just saying.
So let's kind of do a review of validation, affirmation, real quick, and then encouragement. So validation is you're doing that the right way, or that was done correctly, or that worked. Something very, very surface level.
Yeah, I think affirmation is just notching it up a little bit, and it's you're doing that the right way, and you're doing it well, or you're adding your creativity to that, and that's cool.
Yeah,
that's nothing, and I think affirmation, and this is where I think it gets hard for you and I to talk about. But putting it back into, I think, our own personal lives, it's that person that we have is maybe it's a coworker that we don't have a deep relationship with, or it's somebody that we're getting to know that we're not kind of close friends yet. We're wanting to deepen that relationship, so it's the next step in that. I think validation is pretty much what we do at work.
Right. A supervisor could do it of like, yep, that's the right way to do it.
Right.
Yep, you did that.
Yep. And I think then if we're increasing in intensity or depth in our relationship, affirmation is the next step of going, okay, I want to validate you're doing that right, and I want to add a little bit more so you know that I see you.
Yeah. I liked how you did that a little bit differently and made it your own.
Right. And I think then encouragement is going, wow, you are so creative. You are so gifted in that area. You're doing it right. You're doing it in your own way, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And man, this is going to be really impactful for the people that you're working with. Great job.
Yeah. I've seen what you're doing. I know a little bit about you and your hopes and dreams, and I'm seeing how that is all working together in what's going on right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Next week, we will finish up this series on encouragement by talking about edification.
With a special guest,
my dad. Who I think is a really, really strong edifier. And for a lot of you, edification is a word that you don't use ever. I mean, it's not very commonly used. And so you may not even know what it means. And so I encourage you to tune in next week, do some research on your own if you'd like, or just tune in next week and we will lay out for you what edification means in our perspective. And we'd love to hear from you what your perspective on edification is and on the past 3 different steps of encouragement that we've done.
And I think it's going to be important that if you've started this series to listen through all of them, because edification is going to take it to a whole other level in my mind.
Yeah. So if you feel like the past few episodes have kind of been ho-hum, I know all this, I've got it, I'm a good encourager, next episode is definitely for you. And if you're coming into this where you recognize that encouragement is not a strength of yours, we want to encourage you that we definitely believe that you have the ability to grow into this and that it's something worth the effort and the time to develop and to be an encourager, not just for yourself, but for the people that you interact with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next week.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, you can email candid@mayfieldcounseling.com or call 719-452-4803.